Hello, and welcome to our Elevating Higher Education Events in the Digital Age webinar. My name is Susan Nye, Education Solutions Consultant for Cvent. Before we start, I'd like to just take care of a couple of housekeeping items. Please take a look at the right-hand side of your screen. Here's where you can join the chat. I encourage you to try it out right now. Just pop us a quick message, let us know who you are and what institution or organization you're from. On that same right-hand panel, you'll also be able to submit questions through our Q&A button. We'll be answering questions both during and after the presentation today. Now to kick things off, allow me to introduce our esteemed guests, Sarah Vilnett from Harvard University and Jeremy Hauser from Duke University. Sarah and Jeremy, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you both for joining me in today's conversation. Sarah and Jeremy, let's kick it off with the introductions. And if, as you would introduce yourselves, if you would also share just a brief overview of events at your institution, that would be terrific. Sarah, would you like to start?
Absolutely. Thank you, Susan. It's wonderful to be here with Jeremy, and we're really excited for the webinar today. I am an event technology consultant at Harvard University, working primarily with accounts at Harvard Business School. At Harvard and at Harvard Business School, I oversee about five different accounts in various capacities for different departments across the school. And I work regularly with our external relations team in support of MBA reunions, which we welcome back in the spring and the fall. And in the course of the year, we welcome back approximately 7,000 alumni and guests. And for that, we use on-arrival premium and attendee hub. And I'll speak and refer to that a little bit later in the course of the webinar today. In addition, I'm deployed as needed for other departments on campus and across the river for anything from new users and helping to onboard them and make sure they're all set with a new Cvent account. On the other side of the spectrum is for large-scale, very complex multi-day events that require complex registrations and or the use of on-arrival and attendee hub.
Thanks, Sarah. Jeremy?
Yeah, thanks, Susan, and good morning to everybody. My name is Jeremy Hauser. I am on the Alumni Engagement and Development team at Duke University. More specifically, I'm situated on the Special Events team. Our team is comprised of a team of event professional planners, and also then my Cvent team, which is led by myself, and we have two colleagues that help us with all of our builds. We focus on all the events that alumni and donors would see or be invited to for the university. We have a team that focuses on regional in our overall department, and then our team handles everything that is non-regional. Think about things on campus. We have board meetings. We have a lot of social functions around town or with alumni and student networkings. We have a lot of presidential events, and then of course larger, overarching events like homecoming reunions, women's weekends, things like that.
Terrific. Thank you, and thanks for everybody jumping in the chat. We see Nebraska, Lincoln, Des Moines Area Community College, Oklahoma, Texas, and Arlington. Please keep letting us know who you are. Helps us make sure that we're addressing all of you as appropriately as possible. So in addition to sharing who you are in the chat, please, if we could pop up the first poll, we'd like to know a little bit more about you. So if you take a moment to answer this poll and let us know your role within your organization or your institution, that would be greatly appreciated. So I'm starting to see some responses come in. Hopefully you saw the poll pop up on your screen. Okay. So as we look to see all this, I'll start with my, and as you're responding, I'll start with the first question that I'd like to give to or toss over to Sarah and Jeremy. Sarah and Jeremy, can we start with the top? If you would be good enough to share with this group, what is the vision of your institution beyond events? What is happening that is driving the top level direction of your events? What are the thoughts? What are the directions that you're seeing that influence the way you deliver and measure the events that you have on your campus? Jeremy, can we start with you?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So we have events for all sorts of audiences. However, our president's office has several pillars that we've been charged to focus on as alumni and donor engagement. So what we see there from his office is a directive to focus on not just engaging alumni with the fun social events, but really developing a lifelong learning program and aspect. We've actually been doing it for years, so it's not anything new. Ramped up, enhanced are probably the phrases or words that you would associate with that. It's really something that our alumni and community really want to be part of. Is having those learning opportunities just as though they were on campus, but perhaps maybe virtually. Then in addition to that, we're also in the quiet phase of a campaign. So a campaign at university has us basically in the preparation stages of before going public. And one of those elements that we're focusing on, and we've been charged with a goal to match, is to basically broaden our engagement. So if we're engaging with the percentage of our alumni and donors, we need to increase that throughout this campaign that we have. So we have to develop different types of events, or at least market them differently, to try to get those people through these new on ramps to become engaged with the university.
Thanks, Sarah.
So high level, really at the school, among other things, innovation and really broadening the reach are important initiatives at the school, where we are trying to strive to increase and broaden the reach and engage with more leaders around the world. So for 3 of the 5 accounts that I support, these are new initiatives that are new as of, sort of reformed during COVID. And their focus and engagement as far as broadening the reach is concerned is letting leaders know in the marketplace that they're around and all the great work that they're doing. On the other side, we have reunions, which has a built-in pool. There's not so much of the exposure and broadening the reach. Engagement is more around deepening engagement. So it's really listening to our alumni audience and hearing what they want as far as programming, and especially specifically with reunions, it's really broadening the already existing engagement that we have. So depending on the groups that I'm working with, the engagement is different. But as far as the school is concerned, definitely broadening the reach and engagement is really important. And those are 2 areas that really speak to our event programming and how we execute, is really to try to always keep in mind, how can we broaden the reach, how can we increase our exposure, and how can we innovate, really. And we'll get into some ways that our events have innovated in the last couple of years. And that really speaks to the 2 most important pillars as far as events are related.
And as I'm looking at the poll, I see several people, commenting, well, I'm across all the board. And I think that Jeremy and Sarah, you both can relate to that too, because while there's a good amount of your time that's focused on alumni and advancement, you also span so many multiple different departments within both of your institutions. And it's super interesting to see that from this poll, a good portion of our audience are from academic and student services, as well as event services with enrollment, and then alumni following after that. So welcome all of you. I do believe that as you're hearing the vision and the level of engagement and innovation that both Jeremy and Sarah are talking about, that you'll find it to be highly applicable to all of your roles in your departments within your institutions. So Sarah, let's stick with you for the next question then. As you're thinking about innovation and engagement, and depending on the group that you're working with, whether it's deepening that reach or broadening it to encompass folks that hadn't previously engaged with you, what's your playbook? How do you approach planning for these kinds of events? How do you how do you align things and structure them when you have these kinds of engagements and events coming up?
So when we think about delivering events, oftentimes when you take a step back and you really think about it, if an event is for 20 people or if an event is for 2,000 people, oftentimes the fundamental steps in delivering that event are very similar or the same. So when we're thinking about, let's say, large complex events, for example, really the first step, and really it applies to the small events too, is really gather as much information as possible. The gotcha sometimes when we're planning events is that we're brought into the conversation a little too late in the planning process. So the goal at any time planning a small event, planning a large event, is really to get into those conversations earlier, as early as possible. Some of those key decisions that are made very early on impact the way registration will take place, the way the schedule is outlined, the way that check-in might go, the way that the on-site experience may go. And I believe that sometimes those that are brainstorming from a programmatic standpoint aren't taking into account those logistics that either will need to be involved in the way that we build registration or the way that we deliver once we're on site. So as soon as you can get into those conversations, the better. Try to get into the room in those brainstorming sessions as early as possible, because it's really both important to maybe alert the planning team. I hear you're trying to do this. Have you considered the implications? Because sometimes I don't think that there's an eye towards how it's going to work in the back, when we're building registration and things like that. But there's also opportunities as they're brainstorming and thinking through. They may not realize that using Cvent, for example, has some capabilities that might really enhance what they're trying to do. So both from the cautious standpoint and also from the additional offering standpoint, I think the more you can just be a fly on the wall in those conversations makes the planning that much better for the user and for us as planners on the back end.
So Sarah, just to stick with that for a second, I'm sure there are folks listening to this, watching this, that are saying, hey, I would love to be involved in the conversations earlier on. That would make my job and my life so much easier. Do you have recommendations for how to insert yourself in that way?
My first reaction is, me too. I would like to be in those conversations sooner too. And sometimes it is truly inserting yourself into those conversations. When you hear that there are those conversations going on, can I get in that meeting? Can I have a conversation with you about that? I'd really love to be part of that conversation. And I think for me, working with so many different areas of the school, it's really just exposing yourself, letting you know that you're out there as a resource, and that you're there simply to be there as a resource, not to guide the conversation in any way. My focus is primarily on the back end Cvent, registration, logistics, and those pieces. I'm not going to insert myself into programmatic pieces unless it applies to the technologies. So I think there's always that caution. You don't want to be stepping on anyone else's toes. I think you just need to approach yourself in that professional manner and say, look, I'm here just to help you if I can, and to offer some suggestions for how we can make this experience better for everyone. And sometimes it is simply inserting yourself a little earlier into the conversations if you can. But it doesn't always happen. But when it does, it really makes for a better experience for everyone involved, both from a planning standpoint and from a user standpoint.
So Jeremy, when we think about Duke, you and your team are planning everything from homecomings, reunions. I know there's a whole litany of pretty significant events, but then you also have newer ones like the Women's Weekend. How does your team approach these varying events, and what are your best practices? What's your playbook look like?
Yeah, good question, Susan. And yeah, definitely, Sarah. I mean, you're all over it. Love the answers. Obviously, I literally walked by a conference room, all glass, the other day, and I saw a kickoff meeting. And I was like, well, I had FOMO right there, but I also felt for them that they were missing out on my expertise being in the equation there. And so I definitely understand 100% what you're saying. That's super important. Yeah, our approach is basically the same for every event. It doesn't matter, like Sarah said, if it's 5 people or 5,000 people. We do so many events that every event gets our undivided attention for the most part, and we want it to be that way. We want to have that same approach, whether it's me or one of my colleagues building the event for you, marketing it, continuing that promotion down the road, onto the data collection side of things. So, using Cvent allows you to do a lot of those higher complexity events that some platforms aren't able to really manage or don't give you the options and the tools you need. For us, it really starts with that, overall project management flow, because there are so many things moving on a day-to-day basis, and because we're helping so many different units and departments at Duke, not just alumni engagement and development. We have to really be on top of what's coming down the pipeline, what's there, what are we maintaining, what's launching, and without that tool, I mean, you would be lost for sure. We try to use some of the features that Steven offers you already to basically get a step ahead. That involves templates, using templates, copy an event. An administrator can copy an event. So if you're looking through your account and you find one, you're like, well, we did an event similar to this. It has a lot of the same setup and structure in it. If I copy it, I'm just going to get myself further down that lane, right? So I'm a little bit of a step ahead. Whatever saves you the most amount of time, you're going to want to utilize that. And we definitely do that to the best of our abilities for all of our events. We want to focus on the new things and maybe those complexities that someone's trying to build within an event as challenges and opportunities for us to expand. But for the most part, we want to be able to use that work we've already done to better ourselves in our position to launch events.
Well, and I think, as I hear both of you talk, a couple questions popped up in our Q&A that are highly relevant. The one, especially for both of you, because you're working with so many different groups and so many different teams across your institutions, is how do you recommend to best coordinate multiple bottom lines and goals across campus and departments?
Yeah, if you want, I can go with that. So because our focus at Duke University is not really on, generating revenue as much as it is, trying to reach out and get that engagement figure moving northwards. Our focus is really on, does this apply to the overall mission of our organization, which in that question would be, alumni engagement and development. And for helping or assisting another department on campus, does it, fall in line with what the president's office wants the university to, achieve or approach within their overall, missions and goals. So there's a little bit of a two-part answer there. We always focus on, what we're working on our strategic plan within like a 4 to 5 year window. If that makes sense, is basically an outline of things that you would want to accomplish in that same period of time. And if it's not necessarily in alignment with it, but we think it's going to further engagement, we might still do it. But otherwise, trying to get to those priority events and the things that will move the needle the most, that's where we would focus on.
Great. So, Sarah, did you have any comment or?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my capacity, I am working with a number of different departments on campus. So although I see the pain where each department is working in a very siloed environment, I feel like I have a bit of the luxury of having visibility into a number of different departments. But I also feel that it's very important in my role to share what others are doing and what they've been successful doing. And I think that can definitely add on a day-to-day basis for those that are strictly working with one department, is how are you sharing your best practices with the department that's right next to you? I know in higher education, I've been in higher education for 20 years now. Silos are a real thing, and that's a struggle that I've had and we've had in higher ed for all 20 years of them. And it's communicating with other departments, know who's doing events on campus, network with them. Is there some way to gather event planners on campus and get together on a regular basis to share what's working, what have been pain points? Because oftentimes you're experiencing so many of the same things. And if you're trying to solve the same problem that someone else has already solved, is that the most efficient use of your time, right? And you may just need to walk to the building next to you. And if you have the opportunity to communicate with those colleagues, learn from each other, and also find creative solutions to solve the same problems that you're all going through. So I think it comes down to really, networking among campus, learning from one another, those that are in similar or the same roles as you, both at your immediate school, but also think about the schools that are nearby. When we're thinking about campus events, that's certainly one animal, but the other is off-campus events. Are they, at the school next to you, or the school, in the same town as you? Are they experiencing some of the similar challenges that you're having, or do you have something to offer to them? Is there something that you've learned that's really going to help them? I think it's being collaborative in that way with other event professionals, either on campus or nearby.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I continue to hear, not only with both of you as you've already been talking, but then quite frankly, with any event planner, regardless of even industry, and certainly across all departments of higher education, is the overarching theme of engagement, and how to not only continue to engage in personalized ways the folks that are commonly interacting with your institution in whatever capacity, but then how do you also broaden reach? And inclusivity is always a big theme. Would you both speak to how you design your events to get more people participating and to keep those goals of inclusivity and broadening reach in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a couple of things. So first of all, one of our charges as a group is to enhance or create these opportunities for people to become engaged with the university that haven't already been so. It's a large percentage of all of our alumni and donor peers, colleagues, friends at the university, et cetera. So we have a lot of programming that we're not directly responsible for as a team, but we facilitate, we help, and we provide that service to. So what we can do is we can market to the right audiences. We can market to the right people. We can use integrations that we built within our Cvent platform and our alumni development database to actually create segmented groups that we can use within our invitation list, right? Or that we can use to actually get those events out in front of people for. Obviously, using different forms of events, modality is important. Whether it's a virtual or in-person event, what has worked in the past, is great for those groups of people that have been your attendees and your volunteers of interest, and people have always been engaged. But if the others are not engaging in those methods, then you need to find something else that will work for them. Obviously, there's a bunch of different options there we can discuss in a little bit, but for us, it's really trying to find the opportunities, and we're still working through that. I think trying to figure out what is the best way to engage it. It's really easy to track like the philanthropic aspects of our work. It's a lot harder to track the engagement, and I think that's what some higher ed institutions are actually focused on right now, is trying to understand how to harness that. So for Duke, we're looking at like the ROE, which is return on engagement. We want people to experience the events, be part of the events, whether it's online or in person. We're trying to figure out. We know there's the correlation, of course, with donating their time and treasure, but we also want to see how that impacts what they do with us the next time. Are they volunteering? Are they joining a board? Or are they networking with students? And trying to figure out all the methods and the events that we can do that we have control over, and who to put those in front of.
Wow, so many more questions there, Jeremy. So let me stick with you for a second and do a couple of follow-ups on that. So I heard you talking about understanding who your audience is and assessing, what modalities, or I'm sorry, what approaches, I think is what you had said would be right, and that you're still testing things out. So in my mind, I'm curious, does that influence modality and how you're delivering some of these events? I mean, obviously reunions, homecoming are going to be in person, but are there other things that you are contemplating, other modalities that you're thinking about for certain events? Is that one of those avenues, or?
Yeah, kind of. So we know, for example, that people are not always going to be able to get back to campus. So when we think about in-person events, a lot of them are happening here in Durham, North Carolina, but not everybody's going to be able to attain that. And just like it is trying to secure faculty and quality speakers, when you have to put them on the road, it's a lot easier to put them on a Zoom screen, and it's a lot easier to get attendees on a Zoom screen right now too, thanks to COVID and a lot of changes the last few years. Some of our groups that we have that are affinity based, maybe it's demographic, maybe it's a student experience group. Think like the marching band, right? Maybe it's a group of alumni based on like a community or region that we're trying to associate or get to go to their first event. It's a lot easier for us to meet them at their place and be on Zoom and focused with that. So we do really consider how we're offering the programming very strategically to a lot of our groups, whether it's the Duke Asian Alumni Alliance or if it's a multi-regional event that we're building as an all-call event, something away from campus perhaps. And we're trying to get one of these signature programs off the ground right now, and it just requires a little bit more collaboration because we want to invite everybody because we don't want to leave anybody out. Inclusivity is big. But we also don't want to over promote events that people are like, well, I'm not going to be able to attend that. I'm 3 states away. It's during the work week. So we have to be cognizant of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sarah, from your perspective at Harvard, engagement, broadening reach, inclusivity, how does that play out for you?
So for the newer initiatives, for example, we're broadening their reach and really exposing people to this new initiative and this new group. Really, when we think about the metrics of any given event for these groups, a lot of times you don't know if it's the first or the second or the third event that you're doing with these groups. There's really we've done this last year. This is the numbers that we've been getting the last few years. So really, it's the number that you come up with that you measure against is really what you're hoping for, right? And once you start to see registrations come in, you can start to see, is it trending up or trending down? But really, to get the engagement and the quality of engagement that they're really looking for, I think the delicate balance that they've had to work with is really how to get the right people in the room, and using the room in person or virtually. It's sort of a loose term, but it's really, do you cast a really wide net and just take anyone, or do you make that net very small and reduce the number of people that you've engaged with? So I think there's a really delicate balance. And what we found is to try to get to the right people in the room versus just a large number is really tapping into some of our existing relationships. Can we lean on faculty? Can we have faculty promote, thinking that they're the experts in this field? Their network is so valuable. How can we help them help us get the right people in the room? Do they have contacts, or do we as a school have contacts at the right companies? And sometimes when we have that beautiful thing with a long runway of lead time, we can really lean on some of our existing school resources. Our library, for example, has a really great research team that can help us sometimes cultivate really great and rich invitation lists that will both get the right people in the room, but also a large number, so we can increase the engagement with the right people. So I think there's always that delicate balance, and you just have to be mindful of how you're going to approach that. But the longer you have, the better off you are as far as getting a really good invitation list that will net really the right people in the room.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I want to switch a little bit the conversation from strategy and overarching approach to how do you deliver this tactically. So while we start to talk about and transition more into the technology, I'd like to pose to the audience another poll. So give us a sense as to what it is that you are using on your campus, within your institution or organization, and whether that be an event platform, something like Cvent, a homegrown system, or a whole assortment of a variety of things. If you could share that with us and give us a sense. Well, while we're seeing that come in, I do want to just touch on one of the things that I don't think is readily going to come out in our conversation, but is important, came up in the Q&A. And could you both address communication and promotion? How do you get people on your campuses to be talking about these events? Homecoming, reunions, so I think everybody's talking about, right? But I'm sure you're looking to broaden those channels too. How do you approach that?
Well, as I mentioned before, I think really leaning into the faculty, their relationships, getting those additional pushes are really, really helpful. But it doesn't certainly guarantee that it's going to go anywhere. However, I will say, once you've got these groups, either on campus or virtually, it's really important and it's key to deliver a tremendous experience for them. And I think once you've done that once, you've got a bit more buy-in. And once you've done that again, you've got more buy-in. And I think the word spreads that way. So I think certainly pushing it out and promoting it is great, but having them go through that experience and taking it back to their companies and talking about this event that they attended, or this webinar, or this online virtual event that they attended, really goes a long way. So it's being really thoughtful about the experience that they're going to have, being thoughtful about the programming that goes into it, and making sure that it's valuable. It's a good use of their time. There's no shortage of webinars that you can attend. But are you making good use of their time? Do they feel like they've walked away having felt that their time was used wisely? Have they learned a lot? Are they going to take that back to their companies? I think that's key as well when you're thinking about it, not just from pushing it out from the promotions aspect, but have you delivered on what you've promised? And I think that's a key aspect of it that we need to be mindful of. Have you used their time wisely? And if you have, then they'll come back.
Great answer. And I think it continues to circulate around the same theme, right? Being out on your campuses, making sure that you're engaging consistently internal constituents, external constituents, and that it's an ongoing process is what I'm hearing from both of you. So it looks like a majority of our listeners and viewers use a whole variety of different technologies, but 40% are using a complete event platform, something like Cvent. So thank you all for your input and insights that helps us understand what you might be interested in hearing a little bit better. So as we transition to technology, I mean, Jeremy, we'll kick this off with you. How do you use technology? In what ways does it power your events? And what is the impact not only on your team, but then of course on your attendees?
Yeah, sure. Wow, there are so many things that you can do with technology, but just don't forget the basics. Like within an event platform, you're looking at first and foremost, getting that registration information out there. You have to build a website. You have to build your emails. You have to get in front of people. And be appealing all at the same time. That experience for the event starts with the first thing you put on their screens. That's usually not the face-to-face interactions. That's usually you actually creating the content that's relevant to the audience, making sure that you're getting it out there through emails, marketing, whether you're using marketing plan that includes volunteers, or if you're doing social through your Marcoms team. You're all able to create that in Cvent and then have that lead directly into registration, which is super helpful. So for technology on our side, we have a homemade at Duke alumni database and donor database system. We integrate with that so that we can collect that registration information. So those are kind of some of like the basic pieces of how we use technology. Some of the more advanced things, the shiny objects would be using things like Cvent's On Arrival, which is a system that allows you to, through an app, track your attendance. Thinking about, if your website and your emails, impressed your audience and got them to register. Now, once they're actually at the event door, like having an electronic system, that is really nice, and people are experiencing that for the first time, because not everybody's able to come back for every event or every reunion cycle, or be at every networking option that you provide them. So, they're still excited when they walk in the door and they're like, oh, I can just like touch the screen or scan my QR code, and I can, on our side, we're like, yeah, great. This is counting the data we can track this post event. On their side, they're like, oh, this is a great experience. Like, I can't wait to come back to another one, and of course, also being able to, use the advanced systems, like whether you're using, a mobile app for, in-person large scale event conference like weekend things, or if you're putting programming onto, Zoom and then promoting that, through your websites or Attendee Hub, et cetera. Those are all elements that we utilize within our account at Duke, and it's really good to be able to reach people in so many different mediums, whether it's before, pre-event, post-event, during the event, whoever you're considering.
Thank you, Jeremy. Sarah?
So as I mentioned before, different shapes and sizes from the departments that I work with. And it's timely that this question comes up, because just yesterday I was meeting with someone on campus who is a new Cvent user within the last year or so. They do an annual symposium, and in the past, they've used a variety of technologies to achieve their event goals. Registration was done via surveys, reporting was done in, basically in Excel, emails using this technology and that technology, historical data tracking was done on an Excel spreadsheet. And really working with this colleague has been really exciting, because what we're trying to do is bring all of those pieces together, and all of that data that previously existed in a number of different places all into one place. So we're right in the midst of trying to get from that to CVent. But the exciting thing is, from her perspective, from a planning perspective, is like she's seeing all this great potential, where she used to have to go to this external technology to check on registration numbers, take that information, put it into Excel, take that from Excel and put it into a report that you could share with the key stakeholders. So on one hand, I'm seeing that sort of grassroots getting to a really good place in CVent, where going forward, I think it's going to just be a game changer for this group. And sort of on the flip side, I have this other account with reunions that's been around for 16, 17 years. So when you're thinking about how do we leverage technology on that side, it's really how can we do what we were doing with CVent better. So we weren't doing a bunch of different Excel spreadsheets, and we've been in CVent. It's a long-standing relationship with them. But one of the examples that we have recently that was really exciting was last spring, when we brought back all of our COVID reunions in the spring, which typically we have one weekend in the fall, one weekend in the spring. This year, and last spring, we brought back over 15,000 alumni in the course of 6 different weekends. And what we needed to take a step back and look at was, okay, we've done this really well. We've done it in CVent. We've used it well. We need to do it better, because we need to be more efficient. We can't just keep doing what we were doing. We need to enlist the resources that we had with CVent to make us more efficient, but also because we just didn't have the bandwidth to just keep repeating processes when we could use one of the features that CVent had to offer. So we went to our partners at CVent. We took a look at the on-arrival system, which is the on-site check-in system. And we said, we need to enhance the experience. We really wanted to wow alumni when they were coming back. They hadn't been around in a while. We were excited, but we also wanted it to be a very streamlined, easy process for them. And in addition to that, we thought about all of the time savings that we had by using that feature that already existed with our trusted partners, and said, okay, well, we're not going to need to worry about reprinting badges, making last minute changes, alphabetizing. We used to spend nights in advance of reunions doing all those things. The fact that they could check in and update their badges on site in real time was a tremendous time savings. We didn't have the luxury of having unlimited time. We had to find the way we could be most efficient. And on the flip side, we brought in the Attendee Hub, which is the mobile application. And again, because of this 6 different weekends, the number of sessions, I can't even, it's hundreds and hundreds of sessions, which for each session, there's a location, there's a speaker, there's an abstract, there's a speaker bio, tons of information. But if it wasn't on a mobile app where that information was being updated in real time, it was out of date the second we print those agendas or those reunion books. So it was a cost savings and it was a time savings for sure, but it really was like a very necessary key piece to being able to execute those reunions, because it was just massive. The undertaking that we had was massive. So on one hand, I have a sort of new and upcoming CVent user, and on the other one, it's sort of a long-standing relationship. It's how do we bring someone into the CVent fold, and on the other side, how can we really enhance the CVent experience for a already existing account that we've been working with.
So I love hearing both of your stories, and I think the examples, Sarah, that you shared are fabulous. I hear both of you, and I was ready to pull it out earlier, Jeremy, but continue to talk about, I think, Jeremy, you're calling it return on engagement, or ROE, rather than like ROI that we commonly hear about. I hear you talking about being able to measure, Jeremy, the how people are engaging across a variety of ways as it pertains to Duke University holistically, not just with one event in particular. Sarah, I also heard a continuous data theme from you as well as to, being able to demonstrate the engagement within the events. And I've heard you talk in the past about how so much of that data has fed your ability to have your team work most effectively. So it's a very long way of asking, tell me, what is it that you're measuring? When we talk about an ROE, what defines that? What things are you looking at, and how are you reporting that out amongst your constituents on campus?
It's quality and quantity, right? We care about both because engagement is great, but if it's not the kind or level of engagement that you're really striving for, and people feel that, then they might not come back to your next event, right? It could be their first experience with a Duke event, and I'm sure the same thing can be said on Sarah's side. So we look at a lot of the information that we put on the sites and the emails, and it's great, right? But a lot of times, if you're not able to get that data back out of the registration platform you're using, it's not really going to help move the needle or help you achieve your goals as an organization. So we collect that data, and we are using that then to make decisions on programming for the following years or the next plan. So that data could be simple as registration numbers. It could be click-through numbers. It could be the attendance rate, whether online or in person. But then on the flip side, having quality engagement, there's really no way to track that unless you're surveying your constituents and your attendees. So we use a survey system, and we base that on NPS, and also just asking questions to those who attend the event, whether it's online or in person. It doesn't really matter. We just want to hear their experience. If they have concerns or questions, you often get the top and the bottom and not so much the midsection there, but working with an NPS system, you're getting an absolute score. So you really do know if you did a good job with your event, you got a home run, or if not. And then, of course, we're also getting that word of mouth, that feedback instantly. And while we don't have a collection bucket or an app at the moment to use, I know that others do.
Thank you. Sarah?
Absolutely. We are surveying very similar to how Jeremy explains. We want to hear the feedback once the alums or the event participants have experienced the event that we provided. The one area that we've just since last spring really started to enlist is, how do we collect as much feedback as we can in real time? And one of the ways that we've been able to do that is for reunions specifically, we have a staff version of the mobile app. So the alumni have their own mobile app, and our staff have exactly the same, but more information that's specific to our staff. And the key piece of that with regard to getting feedback is we've added session surveys, and that, in addition to other surveys that exist in the app, provides our staff with the opportunity to, at any given time during the reunion weekend, tapping a button, providing either their own feedback or feedback that they're hearing from alumni in real time, push it into the app, and now we've got it to A, digest, and B, report on later. So having that easy access for them to provide the feedback that they're hearing has been really, really helpful. And that feedback can be anything from anecdotal feedback to, this session went really smoothly, or this session was really, what is the word? Over too many people showed up for the room. We needed a simulcast room. So it's really important to track that information. And the key is having our staff have immediate access to simply click a button and provide us with the feedback that they're gathering as the weekend is going on. Oftentimes, some of us as planners, we're not interfacing with the alums in real time. We're in the corner somewhere updating mobile app. But there are a tremendous number of staff that are out listening to alumni, gathering that rich feedback. So we wanted to make sure that there was a quick and easy way for them to gather that feedback and put it somewhere. So we're not waiting until the week after reunions or 2 weeks after reunions and saying, well, how do you think it went? What were you hearing? It's better to get it in real time as it's happening. It just makes for better data, better reporting, and better reunions going forward.
So thank you both. I'm hearing a lot of, the data that you're tracking, both quantitative and qualitative. The Sarah and Jeremy, both, you're alluding very much to, how that data then informs the direction that you take moving forward with the next round of events. I'm also curious, though, what about your leadership? Is there a certain amount of data or reporting that you are sharing about the performance of these events, and how do you approach that?
Yeah, on our side, I think for reporting purposes, we're always involving program directors from the launch of an event. So we are getting them that real-time information with regards to registration and flow. But then on the flip side, they'll have access to their survey post-event. So they'll be able to see how the event's actually being adopted, as people go through that registration cycle. And then, of course, what happened during the event. The program directors aren't going to be there for every event. And so it's nice for them to, basically follow along with us while we're doing that. I think for a lot of the events, though, most of the time, they're actually, immersed. They're on top of it. Our leaders are, brought up to speed within vertical meetings, and those reports are shared, externally. We have a volunteer engagement team within our group, and specifically, they're charged with, harvesting all the engagement data that we're collecting. And so it's being shared not only upward, but outward. Because the alums actually want to be, working side by side to help promote these events. And if they know the history of these events and the data behind them, they're going to be more willing to help, market organically these events for us in the future.
Wonderful. Sarah, your take?
And I'm going to steal something that I heard Jeremy say before. The reporting is so key when you start to think about how you're going to build registration. You want to know, what are you going to need to report on after the fact, and make sure that that's covered in your registration process. And that is a key component. And that's something that really you need to keep your ears out for those types of things. Ask the question, what are you going to want to report on after the fact? We want to make sure we're asking those questions. We don't want to get to the end of the event and say, oh, well, what were the demographics of this group, or where most of these people coming from? And you never ask that question. It's a missed opportunity for reporting from that perspective. Other areas that we now have information about, for example, within the mobile app, we can now track click tracking, who's interested in what, which of these sessions is of the greatest interest to our groups. I think programmatically moving forward, we can sort of see where the trends are going. And that's not simply for reunions. There are a number of different events that happen in between reunions all year long. But what can we learn from this large group of alumni that are coming back? What are they interested in? What are they, not only what are they attending, but what are they clicking into? What do they want to learn more about? And finally, with regard to reporting, is that we have the capability through CVent to use the reporting portal. And what that does is give non-CVent users, key stakeholders, planners that are involved in an event, but aren't in CVent every day, they still have access to that data. So you're not getting hit every day with, can you pull a registration report? Can you tell me what, how many people are from this school, or all of those questions that you get as a planner on a one-off basis. Simply creating a reporting portal for anyone on campus to be able to access that data in real time on their own. It could be a Sunday afternoon if they are just curious about registration demographics. Pulling that on their own frees up time for us as planners. So utilizing that reporting portal has been key for leadership, key stakeholders to get access to that data.
It was a game changer.
So you're doing the same?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. So I have one more question, and then we'll transition to Q&A. So to our audience, please, any questions that you have for Sarah or Jeremy, put into the Q&A, and we'll get to those in a second. My final question to both of you really is, we know that we have a large number of event planners here, academic and student services folks that the majority have a variety of different technologies that they're leveraging. So do you have any final best practices, inspirational words? So any thoughts that you'd like to share with this group?
I would, with regard to sort of transitioning from that approach of having a bunch of different technologies trying to get you to where you need from an event planning standpoint, to hopefully moving towards a Cvent platform, it can certainly be overwhelming. Cvent is a very comprehensive tool and it can do a lot. Take it in steps. Don't try to do everything at once. If you are going down that path, take your time, build out some really great templates, document the steps that you take along the way. I found with moving from department to department or from event to event, I can't keep track of why did I build this event this way? What is something I need to make sure that I do the next time around? What went well, what didn't? Sometimes changing channels so constantly, I have to do a really good job of documenting the steps that I took, keeping notes of why I took those steps. And I think as new Cvent users, I think that's the one piece. It takes a little bit of extra time, but really document not only the steps you take in building an event or creating a template, but why did you make those decisions at that time? Because shiny things fly by. That might be not be your primary focus. You may be planning an event, but you also may be doing 100 different things. And when you're new to Cvent, I think that helps to keep you on track with building the event and building them in a consistent fashion that are going to work for you and for your users. So those are just a couple things off the top of my mind.
Yeah, and definitely, as Susan and Sarah were both talking about earlier, I think, I've had the opportunity to onboard so many user groups across campus, from spreadsheets to Qualtrics forms to paper, everything that people were doing to collect this information that somehow was gained to them. Making it's a great experience when others are doing something similar because you can share, what worked, what did not work. So make sure you're reaching out and basically collaborating with other individuals or groups on campus that are using a tool like this, and definitely see what the shortcomings and the advantages were. That was really great to share that information, word of mouth, as user groups were blossoming and developing. Then the second thing is really just making sure that you allow your events to work for you. Take advantage of templates that are in the system. If you have emails that you really like or events, copy them over. There's no point in trying to reinvent the wheel. If you've already done it in your account, you can easily get that back out, turn it around, recycle that event, and repurpose it for something else. Save your team the most amount of time. That's what I would share.
Thank you. Thank you both. So let's shift to a couple of questions that have popped up. One of the first ones that I see, well, we did try and take a couple during the session as promised. What are your reporting best practice for ensuring that you're able to provide all the relevant event data related to event goals with the stakeholders? I think you both touched on this a fair amount in terms of using the dashboards and being able to report out not only to your own groups, but then to leadership as well. Is there anything else that you would want to add to that one?
Yeah, I mean, you're only going to get out what you put in. So wherever people are filling out, as Sarah mentioned, in registration, that's what you're going to be able to report on. So if you're needing something, or if you're thinking, oh, we should ask this last event, just make sure you add it for the next time, a debrief meeting, get that list of, oops, we didn't have this, and do it the next time, because at least you don't want to propagate the issue. Maybe it just happened once.
Great. Is there anything else to add? I know we had covered that one a fair amount.
Nothing to add.
Okay. Let's take a look at the next question. So this comes from Karen. We use many different technologies for our events and want to move to a single event platform. What recommendations do you have for justifying this investment to our leadership? I feel like that's one that we hear quite a bit. Like, oh my gosh, we would love to have this. How do we get others to buy into it?
Yeah, I definitely get that question a lot. I I speak to a lot of people on campus that are interested in Cvent, or just maybe looking at different technologies that can sort of streamline their processes. And I think it's a bit more work on your end as the planner, but I think really doing some due diligence as far as how long does it take for you to do some of the typical processes in executing an event, and trying to anticipate how much saving of time, because I think that's the key. It's kind of the hardest number to come up with, but I think it's also a really valuable number. The time that you're spending going from technology to technology, try to think through how much time do you spend bouncing around, and how much time does it take for you to get data from one technology to the next in order to get everything in one place. And I think when you can start to justify the time that you spend, and the time, I don't want to say that you waste, but the time that you can be using doing other things if you had a system that was more streamlined and a one-stop shop. The other thing that I would suggest is talk to your Cvent contacts. Find others in your industry. I know I get calls sometimes from other Cvent users in higher education. How are they using it? How are they finding that it's more efficient? Having some of that qualitative data that you can share with leadership. This is what another school is doing. This is how they got from where I am currently to now using Cvent. They've saved time. The more time you save, the more you can be doing other things, greater things. You're just that much more efficient. So I think it starts to come into those intangibles a little bit, but also collaborating with other departments on campus. What I'm finding and what we're trying to move towards is if two small departments work under one Cvent account for a longer contract time, you can really save on that pre-registrant cost. So can you work with another team and split the cost of having that account? If you don't think your department alone can justify the cost, can you share it with another department and work together? There are ways to keep your information separate and your event separate from another. That's all totally possible within Cvent, but it might be a way to take the sting out of the contract costs for this specifically.
Yeah, to piggyback on what Sarah said, I mean, they're probably paying for it right now. They just don't realize it. When you think about all that time that it takes to train someone in a platform or tool, and then all the different tools you're using, and then you have to have experts for that tool at your institution to be able to answer the questions for everybody learning and new employees being onboarded. That human resource time is, it's immense. I track everything down to the minute, so I can tell you what we spend on what with regards to our team. So you can share that vertically, and while it doesn't give you a quantitative measurement or anything, it's definitely be true. The more tools you have, the more it takes to learn them all.
And I would just add to that, the one thing that I do hear is we're using X technology, and it's a CRM system, for example, and trying to sort of retrofit, and no question, some of those CRM systems are a tremendous investment, and I can see why you would want to try to retrofit that to be an event registration system. But I've not found in all of my conversations anyone that successfully made that work. But I know the push is, let's use what we already have rather than creating something new. But using an event registration system that's intended to be an event registration system is just a better call. It's, you're not retrofitting it to be anything. It already is that, and it's really tremendously powerful. But I do find often trying to push towards, like, let's use this CRM and try to make it something that it's not. And I think that's a waste of that resource, and it's a waste of time, and it's really frustrating for the event planners.
I can only imagine. Anytime you try to retrofit technology to do something it's not meant to do is challenging. And I think that, of course, you both make fantastic points from a time-saving standpoint, from a training standpoint, all of those elements. The other theme that I also hear often when I'm engaging with higher ed is the opportunity cost of not having a really comprehensive platform. There's so much focus on the student experience and what that looks like, and is it consistent and comprehensive and seamless, and what is the cost of not delivering that experience is probably the other leg of the whatever you want to call it, the triangle or the answer that I often hear institutions talking about.
That's a great point.
So we're happy to continue to take on additional questions. I do see one here that I would like to take about tips and insights. I do want to also call out, though, for anybody that has to, I'm cognizant of time, drop off, that we will be posting other webinars that are coming out, as well as there is a survey button on the bottom right of your screen. We always want to improve these webinars, so please give us your feedback. Let us know what you think and how we can continue to grow these. If you like it, let us know that, so that we know that we should be doing more. So for those of you that can stay on in a couple more minutes, though, I'll take another Q&A question, and then we'll see how we stand and wrap things up. So the question posed here is, do you have any tips or insights into overcoming challenges related to the recent increases in event costs, or improving event ROI with the rising costs? I mean, my gosh, that's a huge topic today, is just the cost of everything, and certainly events is no different. How are you both managing all of that?
Sure. Do you want me to do that, Sarah?
Sure, go for it.
Yeah. So obviously, it's very cumbersome. The cost of business is very high. Our event planners feel that pain on a daily with regards to coming to events that people are trying to put on and realizing what the budget is for that. I think we're in a very, very accommodating situation where our Duke Alumni Engagement Office actually provides this tool for us to use, and not just us, but all the other Duke and Alumni Relations departments around campus. So we maximize it by using it as often as we can. That being said, there are challenges because it does have staffing limitations. It requires people to work on the event. So we're focused more on budgeting of time, not so much the money, because it is kind of supplied to us. We're not actually charging the departments and the event planners for the usage of Cvent as a tool. We're taking that on as a group.
Interesting. Sarah?
Yeah, and I think when we think about the investment, sometimes we're thinking about using Cvent a bit more than just the basic account. And when I was speaking about on arrival, the on-site registration, what we really needed to do was to take a really close look at, as I mentioned before, your time. How much time does it take for you to print the badges, reprint the badges, put them in alphabetical order, make changes, reprint them again, re-alphabetize them, all those things, hours and hours and hours of time. But you'll have to also think about the waste and think about the cost associated with that as well. When you're printing on site and on the fly and making last minute changes, there's a tremendous amount of waste savings that's important to take into account. In the same in the same vein with using the mobile app, we've reduced a tremendous amount of printing cost. It costs to print them, and it also costs to design them, and it costs to update them constantly. And as I mentioned before, the second you print an agenda or a reunion book, the second it goes out of date. So those cost savings are really, when you take a step back and take those into account, both from your time, your printer's time, the cost of actually designing and printing the materials, it's a tremendous amount of money in cost savings, but also in thinking about waste savings and being mindful and being environmentally conscious, taking into account that as well.
Perfect. Thank you. So I do see one, well, I think we'll take one more question, because every time I say there's one more, that they keep on popping in. What types of training opportunities, certifications are available?
So there's a ton. There is a ton of information, whether it's directed training, certifications, and things like that through the Cvent website. There's also a lot of user sharing. A lot of times you're asking the same question that another planner that's using Cvent has already asked. So there's a place for that as well. We can answer each other's questions. We can search for them. We can sort of upvote, just like you are in this webinar here. That's a question I had as well. Let me upvote it in a very similar fashion. Here's something that I haven't been able to figure out, or I wish that Cvent had the capability of doing that. There's a way to upvote those types of things as well, because a lot of times we're feeling the same pain points. We're having the same struggles with doing something, or maybe somebody has already solved for it. So there's this nice community that we have where we can share our learnings as we've gone through CVent. But there is a tremendous resource of trainings, and also leaning on your client success manager. We use ours both from asking a question, I know the answer to this, but can you just give me the answer? Or I have a really complex registration. This is what we're trying to do. These are some of the stipulations. These are some of the goals. Can you help me brainstorm? We have a ton of brainstorming sessions when you're just looking at an event and you're thinking, I don't know where to begin. Your client success manager is a huge help. Ours is. Suzanne is terrific at helping us brainstorm and saying, okay, if they need to do X, okay, this is the path that you need to move forward, but be mindful of Y and Z and all of that. So helping to brainstorm has been hugely helpful. So there's a ton of resources.
Jeremy, anything to add?
Sarah got it all.
So I would also say, we do have a large number of folks that are current CVent customers. CVent also does have the higher ed community. So I encourage you to jump in there, and it's a fantastic place to not only engage with CVenters, but almost more importantly, to engage with one another. So you can find that on the CVent homepage, the website, and I do encourage you to get in there and use that as a resource too. Well, with that, Jeremy and Sarah, it's always a pleasure. Anytime we have the opportunity to chat and to talk. You guys are true experts at what you do, and really appreciate all of your time today. So thank you so much. With that, that'll conclude our webinar. And we thank everybody that participated and made the time out of their busy schedules to come and listen to this. Appreciate your involvement. And again, please take that survey.